Good evening. Welcome to lecture 27. This lecture I said I was going to do on the truth. You'll see what that means in a minute. Before I start that, the last two lectures I've done on boxing. Just tonight I was watching a video about Daniel Dubois. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a British boxer. And I thought, well, this is the fifth boxer that I would have tried. Let's see if I can connect his name to boxing. So what I did was to take Daniel Dubois. Now I'm not sure if he's got a middle name at this point. I haven't seen it because in Wikipedia there is no middle name. So this is the name that he has. I then did the placement value, the large value, the normal value, and the normal inner value. Those are the four basic values. 135 was the placement value. 821 was the large value. 574 was the normal value. And there must be this one here. Yep. 839 was the normal inner value. So then I took boxer, which I already had written down, and I put boxer, and I worked out, I had it on one page, I had normal value, and I then worked out the placement, because that was connected to Mike Tyson, remember? So then I found the the placement value, and I added those together. 7 and 4 is 11. That's 6 and 5 is 11 plus 1 is 12, and 7 and 1 is 8. So I got the large value of Daniel Dubois equal to the total value. That's when I add the normal value and the placement value, and I get the total value, and there equals the large value of Daniel Dubois. So I just thought I'd show you that that it's not just one or two. We can probably keep going through this and show others as well. In this book here, which is one of my latest books on the it's on scientists. It's called Beyond Science, where I take over 200 scientists and I show their connection to what they discovered. For example, on this page, Carl Jansky. While Carl was investigating interference to telephone communications, he discovered unidentifiable radio signals from outer space. He deduced that they were coming from the center of our galaxy, hence started radio astronomy. So Carl Jansky, and the placement value is 122, and interference, because that was what he was investigating, is the same as 122. So we can see that his name is directly connected to interference, and that would show that he has this, let's say, affinity or connection to what he researches in. And this is coming up time and time again. It doesn't matter what I deal with. I can take Leonardo equals 84 equals Mona Lisa. It goes on, whether it's musicians, whether it's artists, whether it's scientists. And now sports people, I'm doing sport, and actors. Daniel Craig equals James Bond, 183. Daniel Craig equals 83. James Bond equals 83. Pierce Brosnan equals 83. Pierce Brosnan is 139, which is 007, and it goes on and on and on. This is all mapped out in the English language, and it's all within the context of either these four codes, or what I call the sum of the squares, or there are sometimes extensions to these as well. You can take these further as well to what I call multi-dimensional codes. But we'll leave that for the moment. We're going to look at the word emet, and we're going to see what we can come up about the truth. This is going to probably be a 3 series of lectures. It's going to go into quite a lot of depth. So you'll probably realise that this is probably the beginning of the real deep mystical, kabbalistical insights into the use of gematria. So In English, that was just a little prod about Daniel Debar. Thought it was quite interesting. So, in Hebrew, the word truth, this is the English, the word truth is emet. Okay? Now, truth has a large value of 477. That's its large value. Emet has a placement value of 1, that's the 13th letter, this is the 22nd letter, and that will give you 36. And the normal values, where Aleph is 1, Mem is 40, and Taf is 400, will give you 441. And that's the normal value, and that's the placement value. And here we have an interesting connection between Hebrew and English. Here we have 477, and if I add these together, it'll give me total value, the placement value, and the normal value. Total value will give me 6 and 1 is 7, 3 and 4 is 7, and 4. 477 is the same as the large value for truth in English. And that happens loads and loads and loads of times. I've got one CD, I've got over 200 Hebrew words connected to English. And I've gone further than that. Almost all my books have interrelated connections between Hebrew and English. And that just cannot be a coincidence. One of the early ones was God. G-O-D was 26. We talked about this in an early lecture. And that Yud Kei Vov Kei, God's tetragrammaton name of Yud, the letter Yud, the Hey, and the Vov and the Hey, is also 26. Secret in Hebrew is Sod, and the normal value of Sod is 70, and secret's placement value is 70, and it goes on. So now these values, let's just take this away. If you can see that the numbers 36 and 441 are square numbers. So 36 is 6 squared. I'm going to go back to my red one. Don't like that one. Throw them away. Right, it's on the floor. Right, 441 is 21 squared. They're both square numbers. We'll see more in the depth of that later. We can also work out the small value, Mispar Katan, if we add up the numbers. So 3 and 6 is 9, or 4 plus 4 and 1 is 9, and 9 is 3 squared. So we see that we've got lots of squares. I'm going to show you how the word emet is also associated with a circle in a minute. But at the moment we can see that it's associated with a square. Now there is a verse in the book of Micah, or Micah in Hebrew. It's in chapter 7 verse 20, and that verse talks about that God gave truth to Jacob. So the verse says, Titan emet liYaakov, he gave truth to Jacob, chesed leAvraham, and kindness to Abraham. Now I need to introduce you, if you haven't ever seen it before, to what is called the 10 Sefirot. In Kabbalah, there are 10 elements of which the whole of creation is based on, and everything has these 10 elements. All the supernal worlds have these 10 elements. They're called the 10 Sefirot. And they start off with one called Keter, and you usually see it like in some circles. And I'm going to do 11. And then there's 2 down here. So this one at the very top is called Keter, the crown. This is like on top of the head. The crown is on top of the head, and represents the power of will. Those things which are above, Tanug, which is pleasure, Ratzon, which is will, and Emunah, which is faith or belief. They are above the intellect. They are something which we would say are beyond our comprehension. We have a desire for something, but we can't really say why we have a desire for that particular thing. When you fall in love with somebody, there's an affinity. You can't really explain why it's there, but you have it. So there's certain things which are above the intellect, and they're represented by the crown. This one is called wisdom. In Hebrew, it's chokhmah. Chokhmah is the Hebrew for wisdom. We'll look at that word some other time. And this one is understanding. And the middle one here is bina. Now, that's bina. Sorry, this is daf. This is knowledge, and it's not usually counted as part of the 10 Sefirot. You might see it put in like dashes around. So you've got 10 circles here, and this one, either they include this and they don't include Keter, or they will include this and not that. The reason being is because the crown down at the very bottom is Malchut, is kingship, and kingship is the same as the crown. Really, it becomes the crown of the next world. There are 4 supernal worlds, and the crown of the Malchut, the kingship of one, becomes the Keter of the world below it. So this is kingship. And then this is what we call the intellectual part. This is the triad of the mind, where you've got wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. They all take place up here in the brain. And then we come to the emotional traits, this is chesed, kindness. This is severity. And in Hebrew it's called gevura. This is chesed. And this one is called tiferet, which we would translate as splendor. And then we get, I won't write this down, but this is Netzach Chod Yesod, this is victory, glory and foundation, and then at the bottom is kindness. We're going to be interested in these 3 here, this emotional triad here. Because it says that God gave kindness to Abraham, and that's Chesed Abraham. So this one here, if I can just use another colour, I'll use the blue one. So this is, I won't use the blue one. Magic. I'll use this blue one. This is A for Abraham. So here's the aspect of kindness. There's another verse which is in the book of Genesis, when Jacob is leaving Lavan, who he's been with for 20 years, and he doesn't tell him he's going. He takes his 4 wives and all his children, and they go off. And Lavan gets to hear about it and chases after him with his sons, and they meet at Galeed, which was going to be called Galeed, a place. And Lavan is really angry with Jacob for what he did, running away. And Jacob gets back at him with quite an interesting dialogue. And he says the following. He said, if it wasn't for the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the dread of Isaac, Pachad Yitzchok, being with me, surely you would have sent me away empty. In other words, Lavan was such a cheat. He cheated him on his wife. He cheated him 10 times in changing his wages in the last 6 years. So he was a very deceptive person. And Jacob said to him, that's if it wasn't for the fear of Yitzchok. So Pachad really means dread. Yitzchak, when he gives the blessing to Jacob and Esau, remember Jacob comes first, and when Jacob goes, his brother Esau comes, to whom was meant to have the blessing. And it says that Yitzchak trembled exceedingly when he realized what had happened. And people would think, oh, he trembled exceedingly because he gave the bracha to the wrong person. The answer is no. He trembled exceedingly because he realized that he could have given the bracha to the wrong person had Jacob not deceived him, and Esau had come for the blessing. He realized that he wasn't the person really to get that blessing. So, but Pachad Yitzchak means the dread of of Yitzchak, and therefore that's why he's part of Gevurah, because this is the aspect of fear, of dread, of holding back. This is of giving out. So this one becomes Isaac or Yitzchak. And Tiferet, which is the balance, is Jacob. Tiferet belongs to Jacob's splendor, and he's what we call the middle pillar. In the Zohar, the major work on Kabbalah, it states that, well, in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle in the wilderness, they had to build this this central building, which were made of planks, karashim, and there were bolts to join at the top and the bottom. Every pair was joined together, but there was another bolt that went right through the center, through the middle, and it went from one end to the other end, and and the Zohar says that represents Jacob, Yaakov, because he's the midah of emet, the truth, and the word emet stretches from one end of the alphabet, the aleph, and the middle letter mem, and then the final letter taf. So it actually goes from the beginning to the end with the letter sort of in the middle. And that is what Yaakov is, the whole of the middle pillar. And the rabbis explained that both Abraham and Isaac had two sons. Well, Abraham had more, but the main one had two main sons. He had Isaac and Ishmael, and of those two, only Isaac became the next one generation to receive the main blessing. And then Isaac had two sons, was Esau and Jacob, and only Jacob was to receive the main blessing, but not Esau. And then Jacob had 12 sons, and all of them received the blessings from Jacob, and they all became part of the children of Israel. So the reason for that is because Yaakov was mixture of both chesed and gevurah, of severity and kindness. He had this blend and this balance. Therefore, Yaakov represents balance, and his children were brought up with that balance. Excuse me, still got this cough. So we have chesed on one side, is Abraham, and Yitzchak is pachad, is severity, and Yaakov is tiferet. And I want you to remember that. We're going to come onto that and show how this is all connected. I'm going to rub this all off. Right, so now we're going to go back to the word emet, and we're going to show how the word emet is connected to Yaakov in two ways. First of all, let's take Jacob in English, and you'll see that there's this interesting, and it happens very, very often, this interesting sort of connection, interconnectivity between Hebrew and English, where I would take the English of one and the Hebrew of the other, and connect it that way. So in this case, if we look at the large value of Jacob, it's 252, and that's his large value. Interestingly enough, the large value of Isaac is also 252, and the large value of Noah is also 252. And there is a particular reason for that, which I won't go into now, where I'll show how this number here, 252, is connected to the soul of Messiah, the spirit of the Messiah. I might actually have it here, so I can, I think I did write it down. The spirit of the Messiah. The spirit of the Messiah has a placement value of 252. And that's because the spirit of Mashiach, Messiah, has to pass down through the generations, all the way through from Adam, but in this case from Noah, because he was the man most righteous at the time and survived the flood. So it goes down through the generations. So, but that's another topic. So we've got this connection. Just for a moment, we're just concerned with Isaac. We can see that truth is connected to Noah and Isaac as well. So sorry, Jacob is the main one here. So if I take the word emet and I work out the normal inner value, remember to get that, I've got aleph is 1, mem is 40, and taf is 400. They're the normal values. And then I work out what is 400 equal to. 400 equals 134. 40 equals 84, and 1 equals 34. If I add that together, 4, 4, 4 is 12, I get 3, 11, 14, 15, carry 1, 1 and 1 is 2, so I get my 252, connecting Emmet to Jacob. Now I'm going to show you something very interesting, and and we'll see how this connects with the squares. So we've shown that the word Emmet equals 36, which is 6 squared, equals 441, which is 21 squared. Let's look at each letter. I'm going to write them out like this. Aleph, Mem, Taf. That's 1, 40, and 400. And 400 is 20 squared. And 1 is 1 squared. 1 times 1. What about 40? 40 is the sum of two squares. It's 36 plus 4, which is 6 squared plus 2 squared. But it's also the difference of 2 squared. It's 49 take away 9, which is 7 squared minus 3 squared. In other words, it's both the sum and the difference of 2 squares. Okay? So, well, is that something which often happens? And the answer is no. It's not very often happens. I think 5 is the one before that. 5 is 4 plus 1, which is 2 squared plus 1. Or it is 9 minus 4, which is 3 squared minus 2 squared. It was a long time ago since I actually did this, but I believe the next number where you get this, both the sum and the difference of 2 squares, is in the 500s, and then after that it goes quite a long way. So it's not frequent. Anybody wants to have a look into that, any mathematicians amongst you want to see about where the next numbers are, it'll be an interesting problem. So the question is, I was looking at these numbers 1, 40 and 400. What's the next one in the series? Now, the most popular way of finding numbers in series is to find the difference, and to do that one takes the difference between the first two, so it's 40 take away 1 is 39, and then I find the difference between 400 and 40, which is 360. Of course these aren't the same, so I then extend it down another level and I'll find the difference of squares of these two numbers, and that will come out to be 321. 360 take away 39 is 321. So it's 321 that I use now as my basic difference, and I put that over here, and I'm going to add 321 to 360, and that will give me 681. 681, and then I add it to this one to give me the final number, the number I'm looking for in the series, which would be 1081. So what's interesting about that number is that we said that Emmet is connected to Yaakov, to Jacob, and that he was on the sphere connected to the middle sphere of Tiferet, and the whole lot represents Emmet because it goes from one end to the other. And the word Tiferet in Hebrew is Taf, I'll write in block, Taf, Pei, Aleph, Resh, Taf. And if I find the normal value of that, you'll find that it is 1081. That's 400, that's 80, that's 1, 200 and 400 gives you 1081. And therefore we see another connection between Yaakov, Jacob, and Emmet and Tiferet, which are connected to each other. So, but that's not the end of the story, because just as an interesting connection, if you now look at these four numbers, we already know that 400 plus 40 plus 1 is 441, which is 21 squared. What if I add these three numbers? 181 plus 400, plus 40, I will get 1, 2, 5, 1. And that number is a square number. And I wrote it down somewhere. Just I'm going to have a quick look. I think it was either 31 squared. I'll have to allow you to work that one out. Here it is. It is, I don't know, for some reason, 39 squared. It's 39 squared, so about that. 39 times 39 is 1,521. So, alright, there's more about this on my slideshow on Emmet, and it continues to explain a bit about this. So I've given you a little bit of a taste there. This is not the end of the story. We're going to look at the connection between Abraham to Chesed and Isaac to Pachad, to this dread, and then we're going to see how Emet comes into the creation story in the very first verse of the Torah. So until the next one, we will leave it there, and I hope you enjoyed that. Please give me a thumbs up and like and subscribe, and if anybody's interested in looking at my books, my website is wowdiscoverers.com. It will be in the description down below on this video, and you're welcome to look at the books that are there for sale. Have a good night.